Howdy, and welcome to the White Hat Law Show with Warren Nord, where we cover a mix of current events, politics, and the law. Take it away, Warren.
Welcome back to White Hat Law. Today we're still in downtown Fort Worth, experiencing a beautiful early voting day. And so with me to talk about elections and campaigning and stuff, I've got the spouses of two of our elected officials who are also running for re-election. I have Bethany Tinderholt, married to Tony Tinderholt, who's currently my representative, House District 93, right?
94.
94, I always get it wrong, sorry. And then we also have Phil Burton. Phil is the husband to Connie Burton, Senate District 10,
right,
for which I am SREC. So what we thought we'd do is just come on and talk about from the prospect or the perspective of the spouse of a candidate, which is not always easy. And we thought that'd be kind of fun. It's just a little mixed up a little bit. We'll start with Bethany. Bethany, give us all your background. Tell us how you met Tony Tinderholt and how you got to be the wife of a House District representative.
So Tony and I actually met in 2007 at a Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce event at the now, Bank of America Tower. We met at City Club. So we met right here in Fort Worth. And I actually walked in the room and he was standing in his uniform and I thought, that's a handsome looking dude. And because I was a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader, I did USO and DOD tours, and I thought this is one of those times where you always see a member of military and thank a member of military. So I actually approached Tony and introduced myself to him and asked him where he'd been stationed, and he started telling me different things that he had done. He had spent obviously 10 years in the Air Force and then ended up with 11 years in the Army. And I said, I've been to Kuwait, Korea, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. And he said, were you in the military? And I said, no. And then I just walked away. So he decided that he kind of wanted to know more, so ended up walking me to my car. And it's kind of a funny story because he invited me to lunch, and it was a week later, and he had never contacted me. So I sent him an email, and I said, were you kidding? Were you actually going to take me to lunch? And he immediately called me, and we went to lunch, and the rest is history. So when I met Tony in 2007, he was in the military. He was in charge of recruiting. And politics never really came about until we kind of started throwing around the idea in 2012, 2013. And he just wanted to continue to serve. So he retired from the military in 2013 after 21 years and just saw an opportunity to continue to serve. And really it just kind of stemmed from there. When we met, I was working for a staffing agency, and of course, since then, I now get to be a stay-at-home mom with our two babies.
Bethany has two children, one of them 3 months old.
3 months old,
3 months
yes,
old.
yes.
So that's pretty amazing.
Little man, yes.
There you go.
So, but yeah, it was something I never expected, and to be honest, did not know what I was getting into. And I just knew both of us, we enjoyed serving. I've always been involved with nonprofits and volunteering, so we just kind of both saw this as a way to continue to serve.
Outstanding.
Great.
Phil, what's yours?
So Connie and I's meeting wasn't quite as exciting as that. We both went to North Texas, and I was from Houston, and she was from the Corpus Christi area. We both ended up at the University of North Texas in Denton, and met each other, got married, both started our jobs, and
What year was that?
Well, see, it's 35 years ago almost. So that was 1984. We both graduated, and so we've lived in North Texas in the Tarrant County area.
84
really
was
ever since
graduation
then.
from college or high school?
I'm sorry, that was college. Was 84.
84.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and how many children do you have?
we have two. We have two girls. They are both adopted from the Gladney Center here in Fort Worth, and they're grown now. One is 26, and one is a senior at OU. I believe she's 22.
Boomer.
Yeah,
Boomer.
absolutely.
So, there you go. So
Yeah.
I have to say that once in a while. Native Oklahoma, what can you do? So,
Yeah.
So tell me, I remember when Connie was first getting started, and she was the only female of the 5 people running for that spot.
Oh yeah.
How'd that decision come about?
Well, it was interesting because she had worked as an activist. I mean, she got really involved in politics. We both did in 2008 when the economy was kind of spiraling down, and we had a Republican in the White House, and we ended up doing a bunch of bailouts and the government doing things that we didn't believe they should do. And then, of course, Obama got reelected, and then sort of the beginnings of the grassroots movement, the Tea Party movement, we plunged ourselves into. We'd always been active in politics, but not really to that level. And so we just felt we had to educate people about what was going on and so forth. And so Connie was very active in several races around in the legislature and was involved in Ted Cruz's first race, and also for our Senate, our state senator. And so she walked for Wendy Davis's opponent. Did everything she could to defeat Wendy Davis, who was a very liberal state senator, and we didn't think she should be representing us. And unfortunately, Wendy won re-election. And so right after that was redistricting. They draw straws in the Senate to see who's going to get a 2-year term and who's going to get a 4-year term, to make sure that while everybody is on the ballot, then they stagger the terms after that. And so Wendy drew the short straw, and so she had a 2-year term. So we had essentially a little bit of a do-over. Connie immediately began looking for someone to run against her, and Wendy, kind of played the victim really well against a male opponent. And so pretty much everybody knew it needed to be a female, and so Connie was really looking for somebody to run against Wendy Davis in that next 2-year cycle. And some of her buddies in the legislature and other people kind of said, "You need to do this." And at first it was a hard no, but eventually got to a yes. And so she threw herself in when we still thought Wendy was going to run for re-election. And then the filibuster came, and she kind of got thrown into the limelight and talked into running for governor. And so
this is a good application of the Peter Principle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing like giving up your gains and doing a reach. Perhaps you ought not to have done.
Yeah, we were actually
for which we were all thankful.
We were super excited to run against Wendy. I mean, it was we felt that she had really given an opponent an opening, a conservative opponent an opening. And one of the things that we had said from the beginning is that in a district like this, where it's 50-50, yes, it is the only swing district, it's really good to have a conservative, somebody who really believes this stuff about limited government.
It doesn't have to think about what she's going to say.
Exactly.
What is my position going to be?
Right.
Nice
and I think it's a fallacy that moderates would be better in a 50-50 district. We're really better off firing up that half of the population that believes government is too big and too intrusive in our lives.
And I thought it's more important to have somebody who actually believes what they say.
Absolutely.
And will do what they say and be fair to the other side.
Yeah.
Too often when we have these moderates, they're really moderates because they're not ideological. They're really just self-centered people who enjoy power. And so you can't trust them, no matter what side you're on.
That's right.
You'd rather have somebody who disagrees with you ideologically, but is going to do what they say they're going to do.
And that's actually worked very well for Connie in the Senate, in the body, because people know where she stands. They're not wondering where she's going to be. And so it really works well for her to be able to look for common ground, and everybody understand that if she's supportive of an issue, it's because it fits with her principles, not because she wants something out of the deal.
Well, and of course, Tony's experience in early on was somewhat more, let's just say, a somewhat more abrupt than perhaps the polished Tony Tinderholt of today,
Right.
So, and I'm sure that the hospitality has been taught in the home.
Yes. Like I said, he wanted to serve, but he's a military guy. I mean, he grew up in the Midwest, and he never really had to, put on that hat of, being being polished. And so he just would talk to soldiers, and he executed orders and did deployments, and that was his thing.
In a good hierarchical arrangement, I will just tell you what to do,
Right.
or I'll be told what to do.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter
Right.
if I
Right.
like it or not.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It's-
He was literally used to breaking down and breaking down doors and running into dangerous situations. And so much like politics,
You're right.
So I do think there are some things that definitely prepared him for this. But yes, he just kind of he would not really think about what was about to come out of his mouth, and it was just like, here's everything, which I think is also a good quality too, because much like Connie, people know where he stands.
Right.
There's nothing. It's very black or white with him, and it's always been that way. And I think that comes from the military. You have to make decisions, and you have to be absolute about them.
Well, with both of your spouses have both been what I would say unusual candidates in that they've gone from non-elected office completely with very, very little of the civic background that you normally see,
That's right.
all the way to, guess what, you're going to Austin and you're representing a lot of people who don't know you, and you're an unknown quantity, and you beat out the person that knew everybody. So it's interesting that both your spouses have done that. We'll take a break for just a minute. We're going to come back and talk about the campaign trail, surprises, and expectations. We'll be right back.
Hang on, y'all. More with Warren when we get back. Welcome back, folks. You're listening to the White Hat Law Show with Warren Norris. Take it away, Warren.
And welcome back. We were talking to Bethany Tinderholt and Phil Burton about their early experiences with their spouses and getting involved in politics. Tell us what has been surprising to you when you said, "Okay, we're going to go do this," and you agreed. And what has been a surprising? What surprises you about this process?
I would say there's been some small ones. There hasn't been a ton of big ones for us. I guess maybe for me, the surprise has been watching Connie grow and seeing her in a situation that I had never seen her in 30 years of marriage, and watching how she plays a particular situation. And so this campaigning thing is pretty interesting in a 50-50 district. Half of the people love you and half the people hate you. And the hates are much louder. That's
Right.
who you hear the most of. And I would have bet 6 years ago that would have thrown Connie into a tizzy, seeing social media hate all day long,
Right.
All that stuff. And it just completely rolls off of her. It just doesn't affect her. Affects me a lot.
That's always been the case. You see the spouse, the person, the candidate, it handles it because it's just business, and the spouse gets all this angst because you're hurting the one I love, and I don't like that. So
exactly.
I didn't ask you, what is it you do during the day?
I'm a vice president for a company called Simpson Strong Tie. We make engineered building products. Our stuff keep houses together and earthquakes and hurricanes and stuff like that.
I have a hard time believing that. You are a white Republican, so aren't you all really just independently wealthy and you just have these things?
That we never had a time when we took our calculator to the grocery store to make sure we didn't put too much in the basket or any of that stuff. It was silver spoon. No, really. Connie and I started out right out of college without a whole lot, and we both just worked hard. Connie worked for somebody else for a while and then started her own wedding planning business and did really well at that until the point where we adopted our oldest daughter, and then she was done with all that. She was focused on being a stay-at-home mom, and she really throws herself into whatever it is that she's focused on.
I just want to make sure we covered that because people always wonder, well, what about you?
Sure.
So it's really just handling all the haters.
And probably the pace of it. It's you don't quite realize how big a Senate district is and how much every group there wants you there all the time, particularly now in campaign season. And so that calendar, and I have a copy of it, we share. What's interesting is the calendar that was our family calendar has now morphed into the campaign, and so I can see it, and I go.
So the family has to sneak onto the calendar.
and I look at that and just say, and I have my stuff's green. There's all these different colors, and Connie's just like boom, 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 all day, every day. And so it's just the energy that it takes. You don't want to do it when you're young because there's all these other things that get in the way, and then you get to be, like us in our 50s, middle 50s, and it's like,
We're
how do
going
we
to go
have
with mature, but
Mature,
not quite
there you go.
old. Old
But-
seems like an exaggeration to me.
really, you got to have some stamina to make it happen, particularly these 2 weeks.
But it's just, 5 or 6 months out of every 2 years, right?
Yeah, no, it's not. That part-time legislator thing, particularly in a Senate district, it's all day. I would say the interim is tougher on her because she has to be everywhere. When you're at the Capitol, you're at the Capitol.
Right.
But and those are long days too. But the interim is very, very busy, and then of course running for re-election on top of it all is
Yeah, I hadn't
kinda
really thought
crazy.
about that. When you're in Austin, you're just kind of there doing your thing.
Yeah.
So, but every night there's an event that you can
Every
go to,
single
right?
night.
Yeah.
Many times you see the same people that you see, the night before. So,
Big fun.
yeah.
Bethany, so what's been the big surprise to you?
Where do I start?
Vitriol?
I think the biggest surprise is that they're just kind of the same thing. There's people that just don't like you. And there's people who, we make it known to many people. We've had death threats. We've had all kinds of things. I've had death threats. And you just kind of look at that, and you don't think going into this that there are going to be people that are that outspoken that despise you
Now,
that
people don't
much.
understand. When you say you've had death threats, what does that mean?
So Tony has filed a couple bills that people don't agree with. And I'm trying to think, our very first round was when I was pregnant with our first child in 2016. We had somebody actually come to our home and leave a letter in our mailbox threatening me. The threats started on Twitter, talking about how they watch me, how they'd hate for something to happen to me, obscene things about me and my child, my unborn child. And fortunately, they caught that person, and actually that individual ended up serving, I believe, 90 days in jail
Wow.
for those threats.
Well, talk about how current events that they seem to repeat over and over, right?
Right.
Yes.
And after that, we had more threats when he was in office or in Austin, and had to have DPS protection for him and for me. And the scary thing is you don't know where the threats are coming from. So I'm walking into the grocery store with, at that time, my newborn child, and I'm thinking, well, is that the person? Is that, and you just don't know. And I'll never forget Valentine's Day. We went to dinner in downtown Austin, and Tony was accosted at the valet. And people came up to him and started yelling at him about his abolition bill, abolition of abortion. And I'm inside with our child, who at that time, Tyler was 7 months old. And we couldn't even enjoy a family dinner because here are these people, threatening us and to our face. And so,
Right, you think that's all Congress and D.C., but
Yeah.
here
Right.
it is, Austin,
Right.
People's Republic, right?
Right.
So,
And and just like Phil said, these are people that we love. These are people that we're watching go through this, and we're going through it. Our families are going through it. And not only that, but then they come back here and they have to have, Tony has a full-time job in addition to this part-time legislature, and in addition to, the interim and doing all the meetings. And so we watch them doing this very amazing, noble thing. And then here there are people attacking us. And I get attacked on Twitter. I still have a Twitter account. I don't know why. I need to shut it down.
Yeah.
Right now it's off. I get no notifications on my phone. I don't want to know what's going on.
it is a different world. It's like a different dimension of reality.
It is.
It's,
And people think that it's okay. It's okay to go on Twitter or Facebook and just be ugly and nasty. But what they don't realize, there's a person on the other end.
Right, and quite often they're your neighbor.
Right.
I
Yes.
told somebody yesterday, I've looked at he said something horrible to me. I went to his Facebook page, which was open to me, and I could, and he and I share everything that's visible.
Right.
It seems like we could be good friends. And I said,
Interesting.
I've been to your page. You look like a reasonable guy.
Right.
We can disagree on this. And he
Right.
said, no, I don't care what you think about me. I mean, I gave him that option. He still wanted just
Yeah.
to be
Right.
ugly.
People are angry.
They are.
People are just angry right now.
And-
And maybe it's always been that way. I don't know. And maybe it's just us that's here in the here and now. But
Well, I have to assume that both of you have experienced vitriol and ugliness that normal people just really don't get.
Yeah.
You know, when most people are not hated by people they don't know. Usually, you've at least earned it in some way. You know, you did something to them. You know, but you get it all. So that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Sort
It
of.
is. Well, and too, with like I said, with Facebook, you know, I think people use that as their outlet, but also people who want to contact Tony feel like, oh, I can just go on Facebook and I can just ask questions, or I can just, and I'm like, that's not really how. Pick up the phone, make it, you know, and so
It's actually easier than you think.
it is,
Yeah.
it is, and I mean, a little known secret, you just call the office.
I think Connie's thing, her bio on Twitter says, "This is Twitter. It's not my Senate office."
There you go. right.
Right.
Yep. So.
Well, okay, so that's an excellent question then. So if you were giving advice to people who have some input into what your spouse is doing, what would you recommend them to do? Just pick up the phone, or send a letter, or an email, or
you know, I think the easiest thing is to pick up the phone and make an appointment. I mean, Tony is constantly going to meetings, as I'm sure Connie is as well. Sometimes they monopolize the whole entire weekend throughout during the week. But, you know, his job, or their job, is to represent everybody in the district. And so it doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent. If you're calling and you're a constituent and you have a problem or you need help, that's what they're there for. And so there's been many times where Tony has gone and he's listened to people who maybe just don't see eye to eye, but that's the job.
That's the job.
That's the job. That's what they're there for.
So what do you know? Of course, you guys have a little bit different views on our positions in life. What do you see your jobs as with respect to your spouse's position?
Well, one of my jobs is I'm the treasurer, so it's super busy right now. A lot coming in, a lot going out. So if one of the things you said, what would I advise? Don't sign up to be the treasurer. Hire a treasurer or do something else, because it's just.
So do you actually do the work on that?
Every night, come home from work and open the Texas the TEC software and start entering checks and entering expenses and all that stuff. It is. It's really clunky software. It's like what you would expect it to be, and so it's a lot of work keeping track of all that. And you don't want mistakes out there.
Right.
Because people
Somebody
will
will
sue
point
you.
them
People
out.
will sue
Yeah,
you.
that's
for-
right.
by-
Exactly.
And if the Texas Ethics Commission decides that they don't like you, then they will enforce the rules against you.
You're right about
And
that.
of course, if the Texas Ethics Commission decides they like your opponent, they will let your opponent get away with murder. And I only mean that exaggerating a little bit, just a little bit. My experience with TEC, and I represent people before the TEC,
Right.
is that it is a worthless organization that's dedicated only to keeping out challengers to the system.
Yeah.
That's, I could be better or more experienced. I'm not sure which one's, if there's any difference between that.
Right.
So, Bethany, what's your job here?
I feel like, honestly, my job is, I think, just to keep his spirits up and be supportive. And it's really hard to sometimes not give advice and just shut my mouth and just listen. During session, my job is really we travel, well, back then it was just Tyler, but now the kids and I, to travel back and forth, to be there with him. I think it makes a huge difference to him when, Tyler, Brennan, and I are down there. And so really, it's honestly, it's my original job. It's to be his cheerleader.
I can imagine very much that
Yes.
it's helpful to come home to it or to the hotel room or wherever you're staying and have the family and some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah.
Because some days are really, really rough, and other days, you guys know, some days you just feel like you got kicked in the teeth, on the House or Senate floor. So.
Now, do you do a lot of proxy work, appearing at meetings when you're?
The first time around I did. This time around when Connie's a known entity, and it seemed for whatever reason it's a bigger race this time around than it was the first time when it was an open seat, and so I haven't done much of that. Connie's got a pretty large staff, and
she does.
A crack campaign manager and a consultant that's smart, and so I'm on their text strings and stuff, and I'm often throwing out unsolicited advice that gets completely ignored.
Isn't that quaint?
Yes.
Mr. Layman. You know,
That's a stupid ad.
that's precious. Thank you, Phil, Bethany.
You bet.
And thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on White Hat Law.
Well, that's a wrap, folks, and we want to thank you for listening to the White Hat Law Show here with Warren Nord. To find out more about Warren, check him out at nordlaw.com. See you next time.